The pony wouldn't move. Not for the trainers. Not for the grooms. Not even for Princess Charlotte herself. It just stood there in the middle of the royal stable yard, head down. Refusing to take a single step, and everyone was starting to panic, Sergeant David Mills stood near the stable entrance. Watching the scene unfold, he wasn't supposed to be there. His shift had ended 20 minutes ago, but something had made him stay. Maybe it was the sound of raised voices. Maybe it was instinct. After 15 years in the household cavalry, he learned to recognize when something was wrong. The pony's name was Buttercup, a small chestnut mare with a white blaze down her face. She'd been a gift to Princess Charlotte on her 8th birthday, handpicked by the Princess Royal herself, gentle, well-trained, perfect for a young girl learning to ride, except today. Buttercup wasn't gentle. She wasn't cooperative. She was terrified. Charlotte stood a few feet away, her riding helmet still on, her face pale. She was trying not to cry. David could see it. The way her jaw was set, the way her hands curled into fists at her sides. She was 9 years old, too young to hide fear completely. Old enough to know she was expected to be brave. "Come on, girl," one of the trainers said, tugging gently on Buttercup's lead rope. "It's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you." But the pony's eyes were wide, her ears pinned back. Every muscle in her body was tense. Something had spooked her badly. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this unfolds. David stepped forward. He didn't announce himself, didn't ask permission. He just walked slowly into the yard, his boots crunching on the gravel. The head trainer looked up. "Sergeant Mills, I didn't realize you were still here." "I was leaving," David said. His voice was calm, steady. "What happened?" "We don't know," the trainer admitted. He looked frustrated, worried. "She was fine during the lesson. Charlotte did beautifully. But when we brought her back to unsaddle her, she just froze. Won't move. Won't respond to anything." David's eyes moved to the pony, then to Charlotte. The princess was watching him now, her blue eyes red-rimmed, hopeful. She knew him. Of course, she knew him. David had been part of the mounted guard detail at royal events for years. He'd ridden beside the royal carriages during trooping the color. He'd stood watch during garden parties. He'd been there, in the background, in his red uniform on his black horse, more times than he could count. But he'd never spoken to Charlotte directly. That wasn't how it worked. Guards didn't interact with the royal children unless absolutely necessary. This felt necessary. David approached the pony slowly. Not from the front. Not from behind. From the side, where she could see him coming. "Hey there, Buttercup," he said quietly. "What's going on with you?" The pony's ears flicked toward his voice. Just slightly, David stopped a few feet away. He didn't reach out, didn't try to touch her. He just stood there, and he waited. The yard had gone quiet. Everyone watching. Charlotte. The trainers. The grooms who had gathered near the stable doors. David had always been good with horses. It wasn't something he talked about much. It wasn't the kind of thing that mattered in performance reviews or promotion boards. But he understood them. The way they thought, the way they communicated, the way fear worked in their minds. Buttercup shifted her weight. Her head lifted slightly. David took one small step closer. "I know you're scared," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Something frightened you, but you're safe now. Nobody here is going to hurt you." The pony's breathing slowed, just a fraction. David glanced at Charlotte. She was watching him with an expression he'd never seen on a royal. Child's face before, hope mixed with desperation. She needed this to work. Not because of protocol or expectations, but because she loved this pony, and she couldn't bear to see her suffering. David understood that feeling. He took another step. Buttercup's ears came forward, and for the first time in 30 minutes, the pony moved. Just one step. Toward David. But it was enough to make everyone in the yard hold their breath. David extended his hand slowly, palm down, not reaching for the pony's face, just offering. Buttercup stretched her neck forward. Her nostrils flared. She sniffed his hand carefully. David stayed perfectly still. He could feel everyone watching, the weight of their attention, but he pushed it out of his mind. Right now, the only thing that mattered was this frightened animal in front of him. "That's it," he murmured. "Good girl." The pony took another small step, then another. Now she was close enough that David could see the white rim around her eyes, the way her skin twitched with nervous energy, the foam at the corners of her mouth from stress. Something had terrified her. But what? David's eyes scanned the stable yard, the building, the trees beyond, looking for anything unusual, anything that might have caused this reaction, and then he saw it. A plastic bag, caught in the hedge near the mounting block. Fluttering in the breeze to a human, it was nothing. Just trash that needed to be picked up. To a horse, it was a predator. Something moving. Something unpredictable. Something dangerous. "Someone get that bag?" David said quietly. "By the hedge. Move slowly." One of the grooms nodded and walked carefully toward it. He pulled it free and tucked it into his pocket. The change in Buttercup was immediate. Her body relaxed. Her ears came fully forward. David placed his hand gently on her neck. She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. "There we go," he said. "That's what scared you, wasn't it? Just a silly piece of plastic." He stroked her neck slowly, rhythmically, the way his grandfather had taught him when David was 7 years old. Learning to ride on his uncle's farm, horses need consistency, his grandfather had said. They need to know what's coming next. They need someone who stays calm when they're falling apart. David had carried that lesson his whole life. Charlotte took a small step forward. David held up his free hand. Not a harsh gesture, just a gentle signal. "Wait," the princess stopped. She understood. "Let her settle first," David said, still stroking Buttercup's neck. "She's been through something scary. She needs a minute." Charlotte nodded. Her eyes were fixed on her pony. On David's hand moving in slow, steady strokes along the chestnut coat, the head trainer cleared his throat. "Sergeant, we need to get her unsaddled and back into her stall." "I know," David said. "But if we rush her now, we'll be right back where we started." Or worse, the trainer looked like he wanted to argue. But something in David's tone stopped him. This wasn't a suggestion. This was how it was going to be. David continued stroking Buttercup's neck, talking to her in that low, quiet voice, telling her she was safe, that everything was okay now. Slowly, the tension drained from the pony's body. Her head lowered. Her breathing deepened. "Okay," David said after a few minutes. "She's ready now." He took the lead rope from the trainer's hand. The man handed it over without a word. David gave the gentlest tug. "Come on, Buttercup. Let's get you inside." Pony hesitated for just a moment. Then she took a step forward. And another. She was following him. David led her slowly across the yard, past the mounting block, past the spot where the plastic bag had been, toward the stable entrance. Buttercup stayed close to his shoulder, trusting him. Following his lead, Charlotte walked behind them, quiet, watchful. Inside the stable, the light was softer. The air smelled of hay and leather and horses. Familiar smells. Comforting smells. David led Buttercup to her stall. The door was already open. Fresh water in the bucket. Hay in the net. But he didn't put her inside yet. Instead, he stood there, one hand on her neck, letting her look around. Letting her remember that this was her space, her home. "You're okay now," he told her. "You're safe here." The pony lowered her head, her eyes half closed. She believed him. David began unsaddling her carefully. No quick movements, no sudden sounds. Just slow, methodical work. The girth came loose. The saddle lifted away, the saddle pad underneath. He handed each piece to the waiting grooms. They took them silently, respectfully. This wasn't how things usually worked in the royal stables. Usually there was chatter, efficiency, multiple people working together to get things done quickly. But right now, Everyone seemed to understand that this moment required something different. Charlotte stepped closer. "Can I brush her?" David glanced at her. The princess held a soft brush in her hand. Her face was still pale, but there was determination there now. "Not fear, let me check first," David said. He ran his hand along Buttercup's side, down her legs, checking for any signs of injury, any swelling or heat, anything that might explain the extreme reaction. Nothing. The pony was physically fine. It had been pure fear. Nothing more. David straightened. "She's okay. You can brush her. Just move slowly. Talk to her while you work." Charlotte stepped forward. She placed the brush gently against Buttercup's shoulder and began to move it in long, smooth strokes. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the pony. "I'm sorry you got scared. I should have noticed. I should have helped you." David heard the guilt in her voice. The self-blame. "It's not your fault," he said quietly. "Sometimes horses get frightened. It happens. What matters is that she's okay now." Charlotte looked up at him. "Because of you." David shook his head. "I just gave her time. That's all she needed." But that wasn't entirely true, and they both knew it. Buttercup had responded to him in a way she hadn't responded to anyone else. There had been something between them, some kind of understanding. The kind of connection you couldn't force or fake, the kind that just existed. Charlotte continued brushing. Her movements were gentle, loving. The pony stood still, calm now, enjoying the attention. And David stood nearby, watching, making sure everything stayed peaceful. He should have left by now. His shift was long over. His wife was probably wondering where he was. But he couldn't bring himself to walk away, not yet. Not until he was sure everything would be okay. The next morning, David was back in his dress uniform. Red tunic pressed to perfection, gold buttons gleaming, all black boots polished until they shone. He was scheduled for ceremonial duty at Buckingham Palace, a routine assignment, standing watch during a state visit. His mind should have been on protocol, on timing, on all the small details that made these events run smoothly. But instead, he kept thinking about Buttercup, about the way she'd trusted him, about Charlotte's face when her pony finally calmed down. He wondered if they'd have another session today. Buttercup would be okay with the regular trainers now, if yesterday had been a one-time thing, or something more. The thought stayed with him through his morning duties, through the changing of the guard, through the arrival of the diplomatic delegation. At noon, his radio crackled to life. Sergeant Mills, report to the stable yard. Immediate request from the Princess of Wales. David's eyebrows rose. Catherine, Charlotte's mother. That was unusual. He acknowledged the message and made his way across the palace grounds, past the gardens, past the tourists taking photos through the gates, to the private stables behind the main residence. Catherine was there waiting. She wore riding boots and casual clothes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No cameras. No staff hovering, just her. "Sergeant Mills," she said as he approached. "Thank you for coming," David saluted. "Your Royal Highness? How can I help?" Catherine's smile was warm, but tired. "Charlotte told me what happened yesterday, with Buttercup. I wanted to thank you personally. It was nothing, ma'am. Just gave the pony some time to settle." "It was more than that," Catherine said. "Charlotte hasn't stopped talking about it. About how you knew exactly what to do, how you made Buttercup feel safe." David didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Catherine continued. "The trainers tried to work with Buttercup this morning, and she wouldn't cooperate again." David's jaw tightened. "Is she all right?" "Physically, yes, but emotionally." Catherine shook her head. "She won't move for anyone, won't leave her stall. Charlotte is devastated. She thinks Buttercup doesn't want to be ridden anymore." "That's not it," David said immediately, and caught himself. "Sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to." "No, please," Catherine interrupted. "Tell me what you think." "What?" "You clearly understand horses better than anyone here." David chose his words carefully. Sometimes when a horse has a bad scare, they lose confidence. In themselves, in their environment, they need someone who can help them rebuild that trust. Someone patient. Someone they feel safe with. Someone like you. Catherine said. David hesitated. I'm not a trainer, ma'am. I'm a guard. It's not really my place, too. I'm asking you to help, Catherine said. Her voice was gentle but firm. Not as a guard. As someone who knows horses, would you be willing to work with Buttercup to help her get past this fear? David thought about his schedule, his duties, the responsibilities he already had. Then he thought about Charlotte's face yesterday, about Buttercup's terror, about how simple it had been to calm her down. Just patience, just time. Yes, ma'am, he said. I'll help. Catherine's relief was visible. Thank you, truly. Charlotte will be so happy. She led him to the stable. Buttercup was in her stall, head low, ignoring the hay net in front of her. Charlotte was there too, sitting on a mounting block outside the stall. Her face was tear-streaked. When she saw David, she jumped up. Sergeant Mills, Mommy said you might come. Did you? Are you going to help Buttercup? David smiled at her. I'm going to try, Your Highness. Just Charlotte, the princess said.
It's just us, please.
David glanced at Catherine. She nodded. All right, David said. Just Charlotte. But you have to call me David. Charlotte's face brightened. Just a little. Okay, David. He approached Buttercup's stall. The pony's ears flicked toward him. Her head came up. She remembered him. David opened the stall door slowly, stepped inside, closed it behind him. Buttercup watched him, cautious but not afraid. Hey, girl, David said. Remember me? He held out his hand. The pony stepped forward, pressed her nose into his palm. Behind him, he heard Charlotte's intake of breath, hopeful. David stroked Buttercup's face gently. You've had a rough couple of days, haven't you? Everything feels scary now. Yeah. You don't know who to trust. The pony leaned into his touch. But we're going to fix that, David continued. Nice and slow. No rushing, no pressure, just you and me. And Charlotte, because she loves you very much. He spent the next hour just standing there, grooming Buttercup, talking to her, letting her get used to his presence again. Charlotte watched from outside the stall. Silent, patient Catherine had left them to it, trusting David, trusting the process. Eventually, David clipped a lead rope to Buttercup's halter. Want to go for a walk? The pony's ears went back slightly, uncertain. Just around the stable, David said. Inside where it's safe? No yard? No plastic bags? It's just nice boring hallways. He gave a gentle tug on the rope. Buttercup hesitated, then took a step forward. David led her out of the stall, to the stable aisle. The pony's body was tense, ready to bolt at any sound. But David kept his pace slow, his voice steady. Gradually, Buttercup relaxed. They walked the length of the stable, past the other stalls, past the tack room, past the feed storage. Nothing scary happened. No sudden movements, no frightening objects. Just a quiet walk with someone she trusted. When they returned to her stall, Buttercup was breathing normally, her ears forward, her eyes soft. David removed the lead rope. Good girl, you did great. He stepped out of the stall and found Charlotte staring at him with something like, How did you do that? She asked. She wouldn't even come out for the trainers this morning. She just stood there shaking. David crouched down so he was at Charlotte's eye level. Can I tell you a secret? The princess nodded eagerly. Horses don't care about titles or training certificates or how many years of experience you have, David said. They care about how you make them feel. If you're calm, they feel calm. If you're patient, they learn patience. If you're trustworthy, they trust you. So I need to make her feel safe, Charlotte said. Exactly, David said. And you can. You already do. She loves you, but right now, she's scared. And scared horses need someone who isn't scared with them. Charlotte thought about that. Were you scared yesterday, when she wouldn't move? David considered lying, giving the brave answer, the expected answer. But something about Charlotte's serious face made him tell the truth. A little, he admitted, not of the horse, but of failing, of not being able to help, of letting you down. Charlotte smiled. Small, but real. You didn't let me down. You saved her. We're not done yet, David said. She's better. but she's not healed. That's going to take time. How much time? Charlotte asked. As much as she needs, David said. Could be days, could be weeks, but I'll be here every day I can. We'll work through this together. Charlotte's eyes filled with tears, but happy ones this time, thank you, David. And in that moment, David knew his life had just changed. He'd been given a responsibility that had nothing to do with his uniform, course rank. He'd been trusted with something precious, and he wasn't going to let anyone down. 3 weeks passed. Every morning before his official duties began, David reported to the stables. Rain or shine, tired or not, he was there, and so was Charlotte. The princess would arrive in her riding clothes, helmet in hand, eyes bright with hope and determination. She'd watch David work with Buttercup, listen to his quiet instructions, learn slowly, carefully. Buttercup was healing. The first week, they just walked. Inside the stable, short distances, building confidence. David would lead, Charlotte would follow. Buttercup would walk between them, safe, protected. The second week, they ventured into the yard, just for a few minutes at a time. David stayed close to Buttercup's shoulder, his hand on her neck, his voice steady. When the pony showed signs of stress, they stopped, waited, let her settle. No pushing, no forcing, just patience. Charlotte learned to read Buttercup's signals. The way her ears moved, the tension in her muscles, the speed of her breathing. She's nervous today, Charlotte said one morning, watching her pony carefully. David nodded. Good eye? What do you think we should do? Go slower, Charlotte said. Stay in the stable longer. Let her know it's okay. Exactly right, David said. The third week, something shifted. David arrived at the stables and found Buttercup standing at her stall door, waiting, her ears forward, her eyes bright. She'd been watching for him. Charlotte saw it too. She knew you were coming. David felt something warm in his chest. Pride, maybe, or connection. The kind you couldn't explain to someone who'd never worked with animals. Right, girl, he said, opening the stall. You ready to try something new today? He didn't take the lead rope. Instead, he just started walking toward the stable yard. Buttercup followed. No rope, no coaxing. She just walked beside him, trusting him completely. Charlotte's hand flew to her mouth. She hadn't expected that. Neither had David, honestly. But he didn't let his surprise show. He just kept walking, steady, confident. Out into the yard they went. The morning sun was bright. Birds sang in the trees, the same trees where the plastic bag had been caught all those weeks ago. Buttercup's steps faltered. Just for a moment, David stopped, waited. The pony looked at the hedge, then at David, then back at the hedge. It's okay, David said quietly. Nothing there is going to hurt you, I promise. Buttercup took a breath, then walked forward, past the hedge, past the spot where she'd frozen in terror. Charlotte let out a small sound. Half laugh, half sob. They made it all the way across the yard. To the far side, where the practice ring waited. David stopped at the gate. What do you think, Buttercup? Want to go in? The pony stood there, considering. Her tail swished. Her ears moved back and forth. Then she took a step forward. Through the gate. Into the ring, David's heart pounded. This was it. The moment that would tell them if all the work had been worth it. Charlotte climbed onto the fence, watching, barely breathing. David stood in the center of the ring. He didn't touch Buttercup, didn't hold her. He just stood there, while Colony said, using the command she knew, the one she'd been trained with since she was a foal. Buttercup's ears flicked. Then she started to walk, in a circle around him, slowly, carefully. Her movement was tense at first, uncertain, but with each step she relaxed. Her head lowered. Her stride lengthened. She was doing it. She was working again. David watched her move, saw the moment when confidence returned, when fear released its grip, when she remembered that this was something she knew how to do, something she'd done 1,000 times before. Good girl, David said. That's it. You're doing great. After a few circles, he called her to stop. Whoa. Buttercup stopped, turned to look at him. There was something different in her eyes now. Something that hadn't been there before, pride. She knew she'd done something difficult. And she'd succeeded. David walked over to her, stroked her neck. You're so brave, he whispered. Do you know that? You're absolutely magnificent. Charlotte jumped down from the fence. She ran over, her face glowing. Can I try now? Can I ride her? David's instinct was to say no, to wait longer. To be sure, but he looked at Buttercup, at the way she stood, calm, confident, ready. Not yet, he said. But soon. Very soon. Charlotte's face fell slightly, but she nodded. She understood. They couldn't rush this last step. Over the next few days, David worked Buttercup in the ring. First, at a walk. Then a trot. Building her strength, rebuilding her confidence in the work, and Charlotte watched every second, taking notes, asking questions, learning not just about riding, but about patience, about trust, about healing. On Friday morning of that third week, David arrived at the stables to find something unexpected. Prince William was there. He stood near the stable entrance in casual. No press, no staff, just him. David saluted immediately. Your Royal Highness, William waved the formality away. Sergeant Mills, Catherine told me about what you've been doing for Charlotte.
For Buttercup.
I wanted to see for myself. David felt a flutter of nervousness. This was different than working with Catherine and Charlotte. William was the future king. His approval or disapproval carried weight. I'm happy to help, sir, David said. May I watch? William asked. I promise not to interfere. Of course, sir. Charlotte arrived moments later. She stopped short when she saw her father. Daddy, did you come to see Buttercup? I did, William said. Your mom says she's doing much better. She's amazing, Charlotte said. David has been teaching her to be brave again. And me too. William's eyebrows rose. Teaching you to be brave? Charlotte nodded seriously. He says being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the thing anyway. Even when you're frightened? William's eyes moved to David. There was something in that look. Respect. Appreciation. That's very wise. David felt his face warm. I just meant that I know what you meant, William said. And you're right. It's a lesson worth learning. For all of us. They went into the stable together. Buttercup was waiting at her stall door as usual. When she saw David, she nickered softly. She's always happy to see you, Charlotte said. More than anyone. David opened the stall. Buttercup walked out without hesitation. She followed him to the yard. Into the practice ring, William stood at the fence, silent, watching David. Worked Buttercup through her paces. Walk, trot, a little canter. The pony moved beautifully, confidently, like she'd never been afraid at all. When they finished, David called Buttercup to him. She came immediately, pressed her head against his chest. She trusts you completely, William said quietly. We've spent a lot of time together, David said. She knows I won't let anything bad happen to her. Charlotte needs to ride her again, William said. She needs to know that bond isn't broken. Ow. David nodded. I was thinking today might be the day. If Charlotte feels ready. Charlotte's eyes went wide. Today, really? If you want to, David said, but only if you feel ready. No pressure. Charlotte looked at her pony, at David, at her father standing by the fence, then she smiled. I'm ready. And David knew, watching her face, that she was telling the truth. The real test was about to begin. The saddle felt heavier than usual in David's hands. He carried it to where Buttercup stood in the practice ring. The pony watched him approach, her ears forward, curious but calm. This was the moment everything could fall apart. Horses remembered trauma. Sometimes one bad experience could undo months of training. One moment of panic could erase all the progress they'd made. David set the saddle on the fence rail. He approached Buttercup slowly, let her sniff his hands. Remind herself that he was safe, that he'd never hurt her. We're going to try something today, he said quietly. Something you haven't done in a while, but I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Buttercup nuzzled his shoulder. David picked up the saddle pad first, held it where Buttercup could see it, smell it. Remember it, the pony's body tensed. Just slightly. I know, David said. Last time you wore this, bad things happened. You got scared. But that's not going to happen today. I promise. He placed the pad gently on her back. Buttercup's skin twitched. Her ears went back, but she didn't move. Didn't try to run. David stroked her neck. Good girl. You're doing so well. He reached for the saddle. Charlotte stood nearby, her hands clasped together, her face pale. William remained at the fence, silent, watchful. David lifted the saddle carefully, placed it on Buttercup's back. The pony shuddered. Her head came up. Her eyes widened. Easy, David said. Easy, girl. Nothing bad is happening. You're safe. He reached under her belly for the girth, buckled it slowly, checking the tightness. Making sure it was secure but not uncomfortable, Buttercup stood still, trembling slightly, but standing. There, David said. All done. See? That wasn't so bad. Led her in a small circle, letting her get used to the weight again. The feeling of the saddle on her back. She walked normally. No panic, no resistance. David felt relief flood through him. Charlotte. Come here. The princess approached. Her riding helmet already on, her gloves pulled tight. I want you to just stand next to her first, David said. Let her see you. Let her remember that you're the one who rides her. Not a stranger, someone she loves. Charlotte placed her hand on Buttercup's shoulder. Hi, girl. It's me. Are you ready to let me ride again? The pony turned her head, looked at Charlotte with one large brown eye. Then she lowered her head, leaned into Charlotte's touch. She's saying yes, Charlotte whispered. David smiled. She is, but we're going to go very slowly. I'm going to lead her while you ride. Just walk. Just for a few minutes. And if at any point either of you gets nervous, we stop immediately. Understood? Charlotte nodded. Understood. David brought over the mounting block, positioned it beside Buttercup. The pony stood still, waiting. Charlotte climbed the steps. At the top, she paused, her hand on the saddle, her eyes meeting David's. You can do this, David said. Both of you can. Charlotte swung her leg over, settled into the saddle, found her stirrups. Buttercup's ears flicked back, listening, feeling the weight, the familiar presence of her rider. But she didn't move, didn't panic. How does she feel? David asked. Tense, Charlotte said. But okay. I think she's okay. David took the lead rope. I've got her. You just focus on sitting quietly, keeping your hands soft, your legs still. Let her remember that having you up there is a good thing. He started walking, slowly, one step at a time. Buttercup walked beside him. Her body was stiff, her movements careful, but she was moving. Charlotte sat perfectly, her posture correct, her hands gentle on the reins. She didn't try to steer, didn't try to control. She just sat there, being present, being calm. They made one circle around the ring. Then, another dot with each step. David felt the tension ease. In Buttercup, in Charlotte, in himself, this was working. How do you feel? David called up to Charlotte. Good, Charlotte said. Her voice was steady, confident. She feels good. Stronger than before? She is stronger, David said. You both are. They completed a third circle, then a fourth. William was smiling now. David could see it from the corner of his eye. The pride on the prince's face. I'm going to let go of the lead rope, David said. Just for a few steps, you'll guide her. But I'll be right here. Charlotte's eyes widened. Are you sure? She's ready, David said. And so are you. He released the rope, stepped back. Charlotte sat there, reins in hand, on her pony for the first time in 3 weeks, alone, in control. Her voice soft but clear. Buttercup's ears flicked forward. Then she walked, straight and steady, following Charlotte's gentle guidance. No lead rope. No David at her head. Just a girl and her pony. Together, Charlotte's face lit up. Joy, pure and unfiltered. We're doing it. David, we're doing it. David felt his throat tighten. He'd seen a lot in his years of service. Ceremonies, celebrations, important moments in history. But this felt bigger somehow, more real. This was a child learning that broken things could be fixed, that fear could be overcome, that patience and love and trust could heal almost anything. You're doing great, David called. Both of you. Charlotte guided Buttercup through another circle, her confidence growing with each step, the pony's movement becoming smoother, more relaxed. They were remembering, both of them, what it felt like when everything was right. When they worked together, when they trusted each other completely. After a few more circles, David called them to stop. That's enough for today. End on a good note. Charlotte dismounted. Her legs were shaky when she hit the ground, but her smile was enormous. She threw her arms around Buttercup's neck. You did it. You were so brave. The pony pressed her head against Charlotte's chest, content. Happy, David began removing the saddle. Buttercup stood quietly. No stress. No fear. Just tired and satisfied. William approached. He placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. I'm very proud of you. It was all David, Charlotte said. He fixed her. He made her brave again. No, David said, setting the saddle aside. You both did that yourselves. I just gave you the time and space to heal. It was more than that, William said. He extended his hand to David. Thank you, truly. You've given my daughter something precious. Not just her pony back, but a lesson she'll carry her whole life. David shook his hand. It was my honor, sir. Will you continue working with them? William asked. I know it's not your official duty, but yes, David said immediately. As long as they need me, Charlotte beamed. Really? You'll keep teaching us? Every day I can, David said, until Buttercup is completely back to normal. And maybe even after that. If you want? I want, Charlotte said. I definitely want. They walked back to the stable together. Charlotte leading Buttercup, David beside them, William following behind. The morning sun was higher now. The stable yard busy with grooms and trainers preparing for the day. Everyone stopped to watch them pass. They'd all heard about Buttercup, about the royal guard who'd worked magic with the frightened pony. But it wasn't magic. David knew that it was just time, patience, understanding, the things that healed most wounds. If you were willing to give them, as they reached Buttercup's stall, Charlotte turned to David. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did Buttercup trust you? Charlotte asked. That first day, when she wouldn't trust anyone else. Why you? David thought about it. About his grandfather's farm, about the horses he'd worked with over the years, about the calm he'd learned to carry inside himself. I think he said slowly. She could tell I wasn't going to give up on her, that I saw her fear, and I didn't judge her for it. I just wanted to help her through it. Charlotte nodded seriously. That's what I want to be like. For her, for everyone, you already are, David said. You just needed someone to show you how. And in that moment, standing in the quiet stable with Charlotte and her pony, David understood something. This hadn't just been about healing a frightened animal. It had been about healing something in all of them. A reminder that even in a world of protocol and duty and expectation, sometimes the most important thing you could do was simply be kind, be patient, be present. The rest would follow. 6 months later, David stood at the edge of the practice ring, watching Charlotte and Buttercup move together, like they'd never been apart. The pony cantered smoothly around the ring, her movements fluid, confident, Beautiful. Charlotte sat perfectly in the saddle, her hands soft on the reins, her body moving with Buttercup's rhythm. A true partnership. It was hard to believe this was the same frightened animal from that day in the stable yard. The same girl who'd stood there crying, helpless to comfort her beloved pony. They'd both changed, grown, healed. David still came to the stables most mornings, not because he had to anymore. Buttercup was completely back to normal. Better than normal, actually. She and Charlotte had developed a bond that went deeper than before, but David came anyway. Because somewhere along the way, this had become more than a duty. It had become something he looked forward to. A part of his day that felt meaningful in ways his ceremonial duties never had. "She's ready," Catherine said from beside him. David turned. He hadn't heard the Princess of Wales approach. "Ready for what, ma'am?" "The summer show," Catherine said. "The Royal Children's Equestrian event. Charlotte wants to compete, and she wants you there." David felt surprise flutter through him. "Me, I'm not a trainer." You're just the person who saved her pony," Catherine interrupted gently. "The person who taught her patience and trust and courage. You're the reason she can compete at all. So yes, you." David watched Charlotte guide Buttercup through a series of movements, circles, figure eights. The pony responded to the slightest touch, the smallest shift in weight. "I'd be honored," David said. The summer show arrived on a bright August morning. The grounds of Windsor were set up with rings and jumps and white tents. Families gathered. Children in riding gear. Parents with cameras. A buzz of excitement in the air. David wore his dress uniform. Red tunic. Polished boots. He stood near the practice area where Charlotte was warming up Buttercup. The pony looked magnificent. Her coat gleamed. Her mane was braided perfectly. She pranced slightly, excited by the energy around her. But she wasn't scared, wasn't panicking, just eager. Charlotte caught sight of David and waved. He walked over. "Nervous?" he asked. A little, Charlotte admitted. "But Buttercup isn't, so I'm trying not to be either." "That's the spirit," David said. "Remember what we practiced. Stay calm, trust her. She knows what to do." "Will you watch?" Charlotte asked. "The whole time?" "I wouldn't miss it," David said. Charlotte's event was scheduled for mid-morning. A beginner's course. Walk and trot. A few small jumps. Nothing too complicated. But for a girl who'd almost lost her pony to fear, it might as well have been the Olympics. David stood at the rail as Charlotte entered the ring. William and Catherine were there too. George and Louis beside them. All watching. All supporting. The judge signaled. Charlotte urged Buttercup forward. The pony moved beautifully from the very first step. Ears forward, steady, confident. They walked the first section, smooth and controlled. Charlotte's posture was perfect. Her hands gentle but sure. Then the trot. Buttercup's legs moved in rhythm. Charlotte rose and fell in the saddle. Perfectly timed. Perfectly balanced. David felt pride swell in his chest. This was the result of months of work, of patience, of trust building slowly over time. The first jump approached. Just a small cross rail. Barely 2 feet high, Charlotte gathered her reins. Buttercup's ears locked forward. They approached together and sailed over. Clean, easy, like it was nothing. Catherine gasped softly. William's hand found hers. They watched their daughter navigate the course. Each jump, each turn, each transition between gaits, and Buttercup performed flawlessly. When Charlotte crossed the finish line, she was grinning so wide her face must have hurt. She patted Buttercup's neck enthusiastically. "Good girl. You were perfect." The pony tossed her head. Pleased with herself, they exited the ring to applause. Charlotte dismounted and immediately found David. Did you see how good she was?" "I saw," David said. "You both were incredible." William approached. "That was extraordinary. I'm so proud of you, Charlotte." "Thank you, Daddy," Charlotte said. "But I couldn't have done it without David. He taught us everything." "I taught you patience," David corrected. "You taught yourself courage." The results were posted an hour later. Charlotte had placed second. Out of 15 riders, a blue ribbon pinned to Buttercup's bridle. The pony wore it like a crown. That evening, as David was preparing to leave, Catherine found him near the stables. Sergeant Mills. A moment. David turned. "Of course, ma'am." Catherine smiled. "I wanted to thank you for everything. You changed something for Charlotte. For all of us, really. You showed us that sometimes the answer to fear isn't force or discipline. It's patience, understanding, time." "I just did what needed to be done," David said. "You did more than that," Catherine said. "You cared. Truly cared. Not because it was your duty, but because you saw a frightened animal and a heartbroken child, and you couldn't walk away." David felt his throat tighten. "It was my honor, ma'am." "Charlotte wants to know if you'll continue working with him," Catherine said. "Not as often, perhaps, but occasionally, to help her keep improving, to maintain the bond you've all built." David didn't have to think about it. Yes, absolutely yes. Catherine's relief was visible. "Thank you. She'll be so happy." As David walked back toward the palace, the sun setting behind him, he thought about the last 6 months, about how unexpectedly life could change, how a single moment, a frightened pony, a little girl's tears could lead to something so much bigger. He'd been a royal guard for 15 years. He'd stood watch over important people, protected them from threats, done his duty with pride and precision. But this felt different. This felt like he'd actually made a difference. Not just in safety or security, but in something deeper, something more human. He'd helped heal something broken, and in the process maybe healed something in himself too. The stable yard was quiet now. The other horses settled for the night, but David could see Buttercup's stall from where he stood. The pony's head was visible over the door. She was watching the sunset, peaceful, content. Charlotte's blue ribbon hung on the stall door. Catching the last light of day, David smiled. Tomorrow, he'd be back in his ceremonial duties. Standing guard, following protocol, doing the job he'd been trained for, but he'd also be back here, in the stables, working with a pony who'd learned to trust again, and a princess who'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was be patient, be kind, be present. The lessons worked both ways. Buttercup had taught him something too, about resilience, about healing, about the quiet power of simply showing up, day after day, even when progress seemed impossible. Inside the palace, lights were coming on, the royal family settling in for the evening, lives continuing, stories unfolding, and somewhere in the stables, a chestnut pony with a white blaze stood in her stall, safe, happy, healed. No longer the frightened animal who'd refused to walk for anyone, but a confident, beloved companion who happened to have a very special bond with a royal guard, who understood her, who'd seen past her fear to the brave creature underneath, who'd never given up on her, not once. And that, David thought as he walked away, was worth more than any medal or promotion could ever be, because some bonds transcend duty. Some connections matter more than protocol, and sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create ripples that change everything. For a little girl, for a frightened pony, for a guard who'd learned that the most important thing he could protect wasn't buildings or people. It was trust, hope, the belief that broken things could be made whole again. David glanced back one last time. Buttercup was still watching the sunset, her ears forward, her eyes soft. She saw him looking and tossed her head. A greeting, a thank you. David raised his hand. A small wave. A promise tomorrow and the day after. And for as long as they needed him, he'd be there, because that's what trust meant, what friendship meant, what love meant. Showing up. Even when it was hard, even when it seemed impossible, even when no one was watching. That's when it mattered most. And as David walked away into the gathering darkness, he carried that truth with him. A reminder that the best things in life couldn't be forced, or rushed, or demanded. They could only be built, slowly, patiently, one small step at a time, until the day you looked up and realized that something beautiful had grown in the space. Between fear and trust, something worth protecting, worth nurturing, worth fighting for, always.